Froggy's Babysitter by Jonathan London, illustrated by Frank Remkewes. Froggy's Babysitter. Froggy woke up. Is this the big day? He wondered. He hopped out of bed and flopped into the kitchen. Flop, flop, flop. Good morning, Froggy, said his mother. Wow, Mom, said Froggy, your tummy is huge. Is the baby coming today? I hope so. She patted her belly and beamed. I want a baby brother, said Froggy. Sisters are great too, said his mom. But Froggy wanted a brother. He daydreamed about him all day. I will teach him how to swim. I will teach him how to play soccer. Froggy, called his father. What? I'm taking Mom to the hospital. Max's mother will stay with you. And off they zoomed in a taxi cab. Froggy felt like he'd swallowed dragonflies for lunch. Max's mother tried to read to him, but Froggy couldn't sit still. She tried to play catch with him, but he kept falling flat on the face. Oof. When will the baby come? He wondered. Finally, he dozed off under the kitchen table. Froggy, called his father. What? Come see the baby. Froggy jumped up and hit his face on the table. Bonk. Then flopped to the baby's room. Flop, flop, flop. It's a girl, said Froggy's dad. A girl, cried Froggy. Yuck. Her name is Polly Wangalina, said Mom. But you can call her Polly for short. Wah, cried Polly. Maybe she's hungry, said Froggy. Let's make her burgers and flies. Soon, Polly was sitting on Mommy's lap, sucking on a bottle of cream of fly mush. Slurp, slurp, slurp. Let me feed her, said Froggy. I can take care of her all by myself. Not yet, said Froggy's mom. When her legs are all grown in and she loses her tail, then you can take care of her. Spring ended. Summer came. Froggy wanted to teach Polly how to bounce on a pogo stick. Boing, boing, boing. But Polly was too little. He wanted to teach her how to jump off a swing, but Polly was too little. You can't do anything, he said, and he flew off the swing and landed in the pond. Splash. One day, Frogalina came to see the baby. She's cute, said Frogalina. Hey, let's play Mommy and Daddy. No way, cried Froggy, and he flopped away. Flop, flop, flop. Summer was almost over. I'm tired of waiting, said Froggy. Polly's no fun. I'm going over to Max's and never coming back. Froggy, called his mom. What? Wait. Mom unwrapped Polly's blanket. Legs, cried Froggy, and her tail's all gone. Yippee! Now I can take care of her. Yes, said her mom. Here's her diaper bag. As soon as Mom went inside, Polly began to cry. Wow. I know, said Froggy. You're hungry. So he sat down by the pond and said, Watch me. Then Froggy snagged 3 flies. Zap, zap, zap. Polly flicked her tongue out too and caught her first fly. Zap. That's pretty good, said Froggy, for a girl. Wow, I know, said Froggy, and sniffed her diapers. Sniff, sniff, sniff. Yikes, said Froggy, holding his nose. Polly Wangalina, you stink. So he laid Polly down and on her back and tore off her diaper. The Froggy wrestled a new diaper on. Froggy, called his mom. What? Time to come in. Froggy flopped inside with Polly. Flop, flop, flop. Guess what, Mom, said Froggy. I taught Polly how to catch flies, and I put her diaper on, all by myself. Froggy lifted Polly up and zloop. Off fell her diaper. Oops, cried Froggy, looking more red in the face than green. That night, Polly wouldn't go to sleep. She cried and cried. Fo, 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 Froggy, wailed Polly. So Froggy flopped to Polly's cradle. Flop, 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 and picked her up. She misses her big brother, said Froggy. Go to sleep, Polly Wangalina. And Polly went to sleep in Froggy's arms. The end. Froggy Eats Out by Jonathan Landon, illustrated by Frank Rigowitz. Froggy Eats Out. It was almost dinner time, and Froggy was hungry. He sat in the kitchen and dreamed about burgers and flies. Then he hopped up and looked for something to eat. He looked in the cabinet, slam. He looked in the fridge, slam. He looked in the oven, bang. Mom yelled, "Froggy, there's nothing to eat. Nothing good to eat." "Froggy," called his mother. "What? Did you forget it's our anniversary? We're going out to eat." "Hurry," sang Froggy. "Let's go. First you have to get dressed up, dear. You're going to a fancy restaurant." So Froggy flopped to his bedroom. Flop, flop, flop. He slipped off his shirt, unzipped his pants, took off his shoes, pulled off his socks, and he even changed his underwear with a zap of electricity. And he tugged on his best pants zip, buttoned on up his best shirt, zut, 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 put on his best socks, zoop, pulled on his best shoes, zut, and tied them up, zwit, zwit, and he put on his best bow tie, zam, and flopped out to show his mom and dad. Flop, flop, flop. "You look very handsome, dear," said his mother, "but you forgot to wash." "Oops," said Froggy. So he went to the bathroom and washed his hands and face. Splash, splash, splash. He used lots of water, but only a little bit of soap. Then he dried off with a towel, zoop, and looked at himself in the mirror. He thought he was one of kind cute. "Froggy," called his father. "What?" "Time to go," said his father. "We'll be late." And off they flopped to the restaurant. At the restaurant, Froggy's eyes grew big and round. There were glowing candles, flowers in vases, and tablecloths as white as snow. "This is a fancy restaurant," said Froggy. "Yes," said his mother. "So remember, be neat, be quiet, and don't put your feet on the table." When they were seated, Froggy said, "I'm hungry. Let's eat." "First we have to order, dear," said his mother. "I want a hamburger," said Froggy. "No hamburgers here," said his father. When the waiter handed him a menu, Froggy opened it and knocked over a glass of water. Crash! "Oops!" cried Froggy. "Oh, Froggy," said his mother, "remember what I told you?" "I know," said Froggy. "Be neat, be quiet, and don't put your feet on the table." But it was hard to be neat and quiet. He fidgeted. He shook salt on his hand and licked it. He banged his spoon on the table, bang, bang, bang. Then he hit hard on the tip of the spoon and flipped it right into the waiter's head. Bonk. After the waiter finally came and took their orders. They waited and waited and waited. Froggy pulled petals off the flowers. He blew on the candle. He sucked on the sugar cubes and ice cubes. Then he hopped up and flopped around the restaurant, flop, 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 singing, be neat, be quiet, and don't put your feet on the table. Froggy! Called his father. What? Please sit down now. Froggy sat down. Finally dinner was served. Froggy stuck his fork into a huge plate of spaghetti and sucked some more up. Slurp. It was fun. He slurped up some more. Slurp, slurp, slurp. And that's when he saw Froggelina. She was sitting with their parents. Hi, Froggy, called Froggelina. Who's that pretty girl frog? Asked his mother. Froggy was so embarrassed he ducked beneath the tablecloth and pulled and pulled and pulled, till a spaghetti and fly sauce landed smack on his head. Splat. Oops, cried Froggy, looking more red in the face than green. Happy anniversary, he croaked. What a mess, cried his father. Oh, Froggy, said his mother. Froggy scooped spaghetti off his face and said, I know, let's eat out at a fast flies place. Good idea, said his mother. Let's go, said his father. And together they leapfrogged all the way there. Flop, flop, flop. There, where they all ate burgers and flies. Munch, crunch, munch. The end. Froggy Goes to the Doctor by Jonathan London. Illustrated by Frank Ramkiewicz. Froggy, wake up! Froggy woke up. Hooray! He thought. No school today. It's my checkup day. I get up late. But wait. What if the doctor wants to give me a shot? Froggy, called his mother. What? It's time to get up, dear. I don't want to get up, said Froggy. It's time for your checkup, said his mother. Now. Froggy crawled out of bed and flopped into the kitchen. Flop, flop, flop. It's time to see Dr. Mugwort, said his mother. Dr. Mugwort was the wife of Froggy's principal, Mr. Mugwort. I don't want to see Dr. Mugwort, groaned Froggy. I feel fine, see? Froggy hopped onto the table and tried to make a muscle. It's just a checkup, said Froggy's mother. Now go get dressed, and don't forget to brush and put on clean underwear. So Froggy flopped back to his room to get dressed. Flop, flop, flop. At the doctor's office, they had to sit a long time in the waiting room. Froggy was worried. What if I need a shot? Then in came Froggelina with her mother. Hi, Froggy, said Froggelina. She bounced down, right beside him. Froggy scooted away. Froggelina scooted closer. Froggy scooted away and fell off the bench. Bonk. Froggy, said his mother. What? Sit up, dear, and please sit still. But it was hard to sit still. He made a paper airplane and threw it in the air. Zwoosh. Just as Dr. Mugwort stepped into the room, It circled once. It circled twice. Then hit her smack in the eye. Zow. Oops, said Froggy. Follow me, said Dr. Mugwort. She was not a happy doctor. She told Froggy to step on the scale, measured how tall he was, then led him and his mother into a room and said, Take off all your clothes, Froggy, except for your underwear, and put on this paper gown. The doctor closed the door behind her. Froggy took off his shoes, pulled off his sock, unbuttoned his shirt, unzipped his pants, and looked down. Oops, cried Froggy. Mom, I forgot my underwear. Froggy's mother laughed. Then she cut holes in the paper pillowcase and made a pair of underpants, held together with safety pins. But Mom, whined Froggy, they look like diapers. He quickly pulled on his paper gown. Zip. Dr. Mugwort came back in. She took his temperature, felt his tummy. Ooh, that tickles, giggled Froggy, and looked in his eyes with delight. Please don't cross your eyes, Froggy. She didn't look in his ears. Froggy didn't have any ears. Then she looked in his mouth. She said, Say, ah. Ah. Oh, said Dr. Mugwort, and almost fell on the floor. Your breath smells like dead flies. Oops, said Froggy. I guess I forgot to brush. She stood up and rubbed her stethoscope. Now this may feel cold, she said, and pressed it against his back. Yikes, yelled Froggy. He grabbed his stethoscope and shouted into it. It's freezing! Again, Dr. Mugwort almost fell on the floor. Then she said, Now, Froggy, let's check your reflexes. She tapped his knee with a little rubber hammer. Nothing. She tapped it a little harder. Bonk. And up flew his foot right into her chin. Clack. This time, Dr. Mugwort did fall on the floor. Oops, cried Froggy, looking more red in the face than green. Mr. Mugwort stood up and glared at him. Time for your shot, Froggy, she said. Then leapfrogged with his mother, flop, 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 all the way to the exit. Hey, Mom, said Froggy. That was fun. Let's come back to see Dr. Mugwort real soon. Not too soon, said Dr. Mugwort, waving goodbye. The end.
Froggy Bakes a Cake by Jonathan Landon, illustrated by Frank Remequez. Froggy Bakes a Cake. It was Froggy's mother's birthday. Froggy was outside making mud pies. Froggy! Called his father. What? Help me bake a cake for your mother. Oh, please, cried Froggy. I want to do it all by myself. So Froggy flopped into the kitchen. Flop, flop, flop. You'll need flour, said his father, and sugar and chocolate. I know, cried Froggy, and he pushed his chair against the counter and climbed up. He took down the flour. He took down the sugar. He took down all the chocolate candy his mother had hidden since Halloween. We need lots of flour and sugar, said Froggy, and he dumped a whole large bag of flour and a whole box of sugar into a big yellow bowl. We need lots and lots of chocolate, said Froggy, and he dumped in 10 handfuls of chocolate. Covered flies. We need milk too, said Froggy's father. I know, cried Froggy, and he flopped to the fridge, flop, 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 and grabbed a carton of milk Oops! It dropped on his foot and spilled. And eggs and butter, added his father. I know, cried Froggy. He snatched a carton of eggs. Oops! He only broke 4 or 5. And just one stick of butter fell on the floor. Don't forget the baking powder, said his father. I know, cried Froggy, and he climbed up and took down the baking powder. Then he cracked 7 eggs into the bowl, crack, 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 and only a few shells fell in. And he put in the butter, blub, and powdered in the milk. Gulp, gulp, gulp. And finally, he dumped in the whole box of baking powder. Shloop. Time to mix it all together, said his father. I know, cried Froggy. And he stirred it all and slopped it and mixed it and plopped it. Then he dumped all the gooey cake butter into a pan and shoved the cake into the oven, and he sang, Ogly, blogly, blubbly cake, I make and bake, and I wait for the cake. Froggy! Called his father. What? While you wait for the cake to bake, help me blow up the balloons. Froggy helped blow up the balloons, and he blew and he blew and he blew pop. Now, said his father, help me set the table. Froggy helped set the table. Oops! He knocked over the lemonade and the paper party tablecloth got all wet. Froggy! Called his mother. What? What smells so good? It's a surprise, yelled Froggy, and he flopped back to the kitchen. Flop, flop, flop. Come and get it, hollered Froggy. Froggy's mother and father flopped in and slid across the buttery floor. And Froggy said, Are you ready? And opened the oven door. Yikes! The cake exploded, yelled Froggy's father. Oops! Cried Froggy, looking more red in the face than green. Too much baking powder, I guess. It's good through, said his father, licking his fingers. Wait, cried Froggy. I'll be right back. Flop, flop, flop. Happy birthday, Mom, he said, and he handed her a fresh mud pie with a candle in it. I made it all by myself. Oh, Froggy, said his mother, this is the best birthday pie I ever had. What a mess, said Froggy's father. Let's go out to celebrate. Great, said Froggy. Yes, said Froggy's mother. And together they leapfrogged all the way to the bakery. Flop, flop, flop. The end. Monarch Butterflies by Helen Frost. Monarch butterflies lay eggs on milkweed plants. Monarch caterpillars have stripes. Monarch chrysalises are green with gold spots. Monarch butterflies are orange and black. Monarch butterflies suck nectar from flowers. Monarch butterflies migrate south during autumn. They migrate to the same places every autumn. They migrate north during spring. Monarch butterflies use the wind to travel. Words to know. The end.
The Valentine Bears by Eve Bunting. Pictures by Jan Brett. The Valentine Bears. It was October 14, and the bear's den was snug and secure for the winter. Mrs. Bear set her alarm for February 14. Then she curled herself comfortably against Mr. Bear's back and listened to his snores. It was good to settle down for a long 4-month sleep. When the alarm went off 4 months later, Mrs. Bear could hardly believe it. It seemed as if she'd just gone to bed. My, she said, yawning. Spring already? And then she remembered. It wasn't spring yet. She set the alarm for a special reason. Mrs. Bear stretched, scratched, kissed Mr. Bear on his nose, and got up. Mr. Bear could sleep through just about anything, and she was glad. She had things to do. First, she made a sign. It's nice to share Valentine's Day with someone you love. She tracked the sign on the wall so Mr. Bear would see it the instant he woke up. Leaves had blown into the den while they slept. Mrs. Bear brushed them into a pile and swept them outside. Brr, she said, standing in front of the den. You'd think they put this special day in summer. Mr. Bear and I have never shared a Valentine's Day in all of our years together. Mrs. Bear dug up the honey pot she had buried in the foam. She pawed off the lid and smiled. It was fruity and rich and smelled of the summer, just the way Mr. Bear liked it. Mrs. Bear carried the pot inside and put it on the table next to the bowl of crunchy dried beetles and bugs. Crispy critters! How Mr. Bear loved crispy critters! She had made 2 Valentine poems way back in summer. Now she got them out of the drawer. One said, red berries are red, blue berries are blue. Termites are sweet, and you are too. Your teeth are so sharp, your claws are so fine. Dear Mr. Bear, you are my Valentine. She couldn't decide which poem she liked best, so she decided to give them both to Mr. Bear. Mrs. Bear huddled herself in her coat and went outside again. Only crazy creatures would be out this early in the year, she muttered. The sun shone through a haze, pale as milk. Crows cawed in the white air. The arms of trees scratched at the sky. Mrs. Bear clawed away the ice on top of the pond. She splashed water on her ears and muzzle. She sleeked her head fur and took a long, cold drink. It was time to waken Mr. Bear. Mr. Bear's snores drifted from the den and she smiled. Mr. Bear could sleep through just about anything. Mrs. Bear shook his shoulder. Time to get up, Mr. Bear. Her, onk, snored Mr. Bear. Mrs. Bear shook harder. Wake up, Mr. Bear. Mr. Bear shrugged her away and turned his face to the wall. Just another 5 weeks, he begged. Mrs. Bear poked his back. Happy Valentine's Day. Mr. Bear curled himself into a fur ball. Her onk, he said. Oh, no, you don't. Mrs. Bear pulled Mr. Bear's ears till he uncurled himself. She tickled his paws. She pried open his eyes and watched them drop close again. Her onk, said Mr. Bear. Mrs. Bear sighed. She took their empty berry can, snuggled deep in her coat, and went back outside. A wolverine slept, safe in a hollow log. A deer drank from the pond. It stopped drinking and looked at Mrs. Bear with surprise as she filled the berry can. Mrs. Bear decided the deer had never seen a bear up about so early. She carried the can of ice water inside. I'm sorry about this, Mr. Bear, she said, but you can't just keep on sleeping. This is a very special day. 1, 2, 3. Surprise! Mr. Bear shouted and sat straight up. It was a surprise, all right. Mrs. Bear jumped and the ice water splashed all over her. Mr. Bear hugged her. You thought I could sleep through just about anything, didn't you? He boomed. Well, I fooled you. Happy Valentine's Day. He pulled a box from under his pillow. I've had these here all along. Oh no, Mr. Bear. Oh, Mr. Bear. Chocolate-covered ants. My very favorites. Mr. Bear licked his lips. Mine too. He admired the sign on the wall. Then Mr. Bear ran for the poems and Mr. Bear read them out loud. Dear Mr. Bear, you are my Valentine. That's lovely. His nose wrinkled. Is that fruity, rich summer honey I smell? Mrs. Bear smiled. Will you join me at the table? They sat together, sharing the Valentine treats, till shadows filled the den and the bowl and box and the honey pot were empty and the special day was ended. And then they went to sleep again until spring.